It's gotta be the Grand Fleet. They probably wanted to find Luffy after becoming an emperor. They wanted to celebrate, but now got caught up in the battle. So I've been thinking a lot about this since the review video, and I'm a lot more conflicted now. Because one problem is that I think the Grand Fleet are waiting for a specific call or signal from Luffy, or at least that's how Luffy made the arrangement sound. Listen, I just want to be the Pirate King, that's all. I don't want to be some kind of big shot. If I ever think we're in trouble, I'll shout for your help. Then you can come save us. However, the counter-argument to that would be how the Grand Fleet, well, interpreted those words. They took Luffy's desire for a no-strings-attached pirate arrangement as a sign that they didn't actually have to listen to him. Sai even says, you can't stop free people doing what they want, which is when they decide to non-consensually form Luffy's Grand Fleet. And with that same logic, you can't stop free people from deciding to either show up and help you or celebrate your accomplishments. And something I should say, because I did miss it in the review video, is that the Grand Fleet have had quite a bit of time to mobilize due to what happened on Wano. Luffy's near-death/arguable actual death experience should have been noticed, because they all have a bit of his Vivia card and it would have done, the fire catchy thing. So they could have been on their way to find him ever since the night of the raid. Although the last we heard of Bartolomeo was from Shanks in chapter 1054, which made it sound like Bartolomeo was still causing a bit of the old trouble in Shanks' territory, which was happening a week after the raid. So Bartolomeo was theoretically still screwing around in Shanks' territory a week after Luffy's dire near/actual death situation. That or Shanks is working with old information and Bartolomeo has long since left his territory. It's 100% Mads. Germa 66 coming to save Vegapunk. So I actually don't hate this idea, although it's interesting that you've chosen to use the word save, whereas I would have said something more like they're coming to take revenge on Vegapunk. It feels like an eternity ago, but during Egghead Island, we've also been following the Germa 66 cover story, which ultimately led to the formation of Neo Mads. The reason why it feels like an eternity is because this cover story ended way back in chapter 1078, which was released in March 2003. So we've had almost a year now without a new cover story, and I think it's time we started the next one. But the conclusion that Vinsmoke, Judge, and Caesar Clown came to was that Mads was a fantastic idea that was ruined by Dr. Vegapunk. He's the reason why their ambitions didn't work out. Him and his peace-loving ways. So if they were on their way to Egghead Island, I highly doubt it's to recruit their old comrade. It would be more likely that they were going to invade Egghead Island to claim the research that was rightfully theirs, or something along those lines. But again, I don't hate the idea at all because it's very thematically appropriate. We've been telling the story of Mads during this arc, so it would be a cool way to wrap things up, and Vegapunk isn't even the only Mads member on the island. We also have Stussy, oh well, not the original one, but we have a Buckingham Stussy, a Neo Stussy if you will. So if Judge and Caesar did rock up, then we'd have a big old Mads reunion that's really only missing Queen. Let's say it isn't them though, they've still got to be plotting something right now. And what do you think the odds are that Caesar and Judge go to recruit Queen? In the cover story, Judge, Caesar, and Queen were said to be the three bitter rivals, fighting amongst themselves to see who would become the number two. And look, to be fair, each of them did go on to become a number two in their own respective ways. But if Caesar and Judge have put that past behind them, then they would probably see Queen in the same sort of friendly way. It was never Queen's fault, it was that Vegapunk. And really, Queen's not exactly doing much at the moment. He's potentially being captured by the Marines and he has no Kaido to serve. So he would be a great addition to the Neomads team. The ship is on fire and Sabo wasn't with the rest of the Rev army, so my bet is Sabo. Alright, it really astounds me how quick people are to forget things. I mean, yeah, I get it. It's One Piece. It's very tricky to keep track of, with all of its billions of characters and locations and the timelines that are confusing. I get it. And also, this was one of like 20 comments saying exactly the same thing. But Sabo was with the rest of the Revolutionary Army. We saw him return to Momoira Island in chapter 1082 to report the Reverie incident, which is how we got the whole Reverie flashback. And Sabo's return to the island happened after Kuma left. Sabo even said, I heard about what happened with Kuma, and Dragon replies, I'm sorry I wasted all of your hard work. Which is even more evidence that Dragon is not on his way. Kuma disappeared and then they went, oh, what should we do now? Oh, let's sit down and have a bit of a long chit chat with Sabo. A very important chit chat, of course, very important. But none of these guys are on the move. And a lot of people are saying that it's Sabo and Dragon because the marine ship is on fire and you can see a gust of wind, but so many other people and things can make fire, and wind is, well, it's everywhere. Except in the calm belt, that's why it's so calm. So let's move on. Who else could it be? I think it could be Shanks. So logistically, this is very possible. Shanks has been shown on Elbaf in the last 24 hours, so he's definitely nearby. In fact, other than the Blackbeard pirates, he's the closest confirmed character to Egghead Island at this point. And he was sailing away from Elbaf yesterday, I think, after beating Kid, so there's no timeline issues. Everything lines up quite nicely there. But I feel like Shanks showing up might be a bit underwhelming. Firstly, because it would be almost like a repeat of the Paramount War. Everything's going to hell, everyone's going to die, and then some dude with red hair rocks up and says, hey, stop that, and we do it because he said it. But also the issue would be then that the big story behind the Egghead incident would have to have Shanks front and center. And I feel like this event needs to be owned by Luffy. He's an emperor now. We can't have all of these big players stepping in to save him. And also, I'm really not feeling the idea of a potential Luffy-Shanks reunion on Egghead. I don't think Shanks is either. He said he wasn't planning to meet up with Luffy on Wano, so I don't know why Egghead would be any different, and something about it just in general doesn't seem right. And it's also a bit meh considering that they just crossed paths on Wano as well. So I hope it's not Shanks, but he is in the area, so who knows. Imagine if Cross Guild showed up, so Buggy could bumble his way into the infamy of killing Saturn. Oh mate, I can imagine it. Buggy the Clown kills Elder Star, Saint Saturn, and instantly becomes the most wanted man in the world. However, logistically, we do need to do some pretty extreme mental gymnastics to make this in any way a reasonable possibility, so here's the routine I've prepared. The last time we saw Cross Guild, Buggy had announced that they were going to claim the One Piece, essentially forcing both Crocodile and Mihawk into it or else risk losing their power base. And how do we begin a hunt for the One Piece? Well, what we've got to do is find us some mystery cubes, which are being held by the 3 other emperors. And if you're Cross Guild, which emperor do you want to target first? Do you want to go for Shanks? Probably not, because Buggy recognizes himself as very inferior to Shanks, and Mihawk would be very difficult to get on board with that as well. So he's out. Now, do you go for Blackbeard? Also probably not, because he's an unknown quantity whose crew took down the Whitebeard pirates and recently defeated Garp the Hero with the help of an ex-Marine admiral. It's not an appealing fight. So who does that leave us with? Well, we've got one choice. We target the Goofball Emperor, who only has a complement of 10 people on his crew to deal with, one of which was trained by Mihawk himself. That's the only way I could see Cross Guild going to Egghead. To use it as an opportunity to strike a vulnerable emperor. But I don't think it's very likely, although it would be funny to see Mihawk's reaction to S-Hawk. But chapter endings like this is what makes and binds this fanbase because they have near infinite possibilities. I've even seen a lot of people saying that it could be Law, as if he's gloriously riding Beppo into battle with the Marines after his horrendous loss on Winter Island, which is a fun image, but I think he's got bigger concerns. Nami sending Jinbe to look for Zoro, because she assumed he'd get lost after the fight with Lucci, and not because he needs help, really shows how much the Straw Hats gew. And because this minor spelling mistake was made on the internet, this comment was flooded with replies such as, "The Straw Hats just gew so much. Is gewing time?" and "Ew, you made me gew." So gewing oneself aside, this is a great point. I love that we've reached a level of crew confidence that we're not even considering the possibility of Zoro being in danger when he's up against an antagonist who previously struck the utmost fear into each and every one of them. And you know, something I always love seeing with every chapter is the reaction of general readers versus the reaction of Twitter readers. I feel like what general readers took away from 1105 is the discussion of who is on their way to Egghead Island, whereas what Twitter took away is that MF going full power against mid-power Lucci, Zoro showing off what Advocock KOH Ashura looks like to Lucci. And it's insane because I know what all of those acronyms mean, but it feels like speaking a completely different language. Although I do really love the art that comes out of it, this really is the only thing that saves One Piece Twitter from being completely insufferable. Back in fictional reality though, Zoro really is at the point where his greatest enemy is his own sense of direction, and that's why Nami sent Jinbe. Other than Nami herself, Jinbe has the best sense of direction in the crew. He's the helmsman. He's the one we trust to steer the ship in the right direction. So now we're trusting him to steer Zoro in the right direction. I like how Sanji is taking leadership. I'm surprised you didn't speak about that moment. I don't know, it's cool to see. That's right, he is. Sanji is generally considered to be the default third captain of the crew. If neither Luffy nor Zoro are available, then Sanji is the one who takes charge, which he's definitely doing in this chapter, and it's always great to see. Something I love so much about the Straw Hats is that the crew is completely modular. You can break them up into any number of formations, and more often than not, they will still work together perfectly. There's always this intrinsic sense of who is in charge in any given combination, which is also why I want to highlight the Nami, Usopp, Chopper, Robin group, formerly featuring Jinbe, because in this group group formation, Nami would always become the natural leader, even if Robin was in a stable condition, because when everyone's aboard the Sunny, Nami's in charge. Apart from choosing their destination, she has absolute authority, and that often translates to operations on land as well. She's so used to being in command on the ship that with no Luffy, Zoro, or Sanji, she happily steps in. And even if Jinbe were there, Nami would still be in charge. He's wiser and stronger, but Jinbe has great respect for authority and seniority, and Nami is his senior on the crew. Although come to think of it, everyone is Jinbe's senior on the crew. Crazy to think that the most established individual with a book full of career achievements is basically the rookie Straw Hat. Sanji's reply to Bonnie in this chapter is a callback to his reply to Nami on Zoark. I don't know if it's a direct callback, but it is very similar. Bonnie asks what about Vegapunk, and Sanji reassures her that they won't be leaving without him, giving a thumbs up and a bit of a happy face, which is the same face he made when Nami asked why Sanji was going with Capone Gang Beige on Zo. So I don't know if it's a callback so much as a character trait. What I do know is that this is not a comforting face, because I believe that Sanji meant what he said. He left Zo with the intention of coming back to the crew, but it didn't turn out that way, and Sanji quite quickly accepted that he left them for good. So when he makes this same face speaking about Vegapunk, it doesn't instill me with the greatest sense of confidence that we're actually leaving with him, because I've seen this Sanji face before and it is not trustworthy. It's not like when Luffy says that he's going to do something. Usually when Luffy says that he's going to do something, it's like he changes reality around him to make that something happen, and Sanji doesn't quite have that ability. If it's Caribou fed Luffy, then he would surely join Straw Hats as the Uber Eats of Straw Hats. You know, people laugh and mock the idea of Caribou joining the Straw Hats, people including me. But if he is the one who gave Luffy the food on Egghead, then he would have an official role in no time. It would be crew feeder. I'm just gonna put this out there. With Luffy's two greatest opponents to date, Kaido and Kizaru, Luffy would have outright lost to both of them if he didn't have a mid-fight meal. You could even make the argument that he wouldn't have beaten Katakuri without snacking on all of his delicious mochi, or even Charlotte Cracker, because Luffy got through that endurance battle by eating all of his biscuit armor. Luffy hasn't beaten an opponent without taking a meal break since Doflamingo. So how is Luffy possibly going to defeat someone like the Blackbeard without someone there to feed him? He isn't. It's as simple as that. So we need Swamp Nakama. Or an even better description of his situation, someone in my comments rather poetically described Caribou as like herpes. Once you caught him, you won't get rid of him. This would be the perfect time for Gear 4 Tank Man to make a triumphant return. No, even better. Gear 5th Tank Man. I really miss Tank Man because it holds a very special place of nostalgia for me, because the very first video I ever made on this channel was a review of chapter 832, the one titled Germa Kingdom. The video itself has since been deleted. It was awful, but it was around the time that the Straw Hats were stuck in the forest, and Tank Man popped up I think around 10 chapters later, so very early into my YouTube hobby. But also, given how much I just ranted about how Luffy always needs food, I'm surprised that this form has never been used again, because he meets the requirements for it a lot, and this is a potential option right now because again, Luffy certainly has the prerequisite physique for it. Is it just me, or are all these chapters getting way shorter? This chapter was only like 10 pages, so it's not just you. This chapter was 13 pages, although it definitely feels shorter because 3 of them were double page spreads. I mean, I guess not double page spreads, but whatever this is that Oda does, where one section takes up about 3/4 of 2 pages, that essentially combines 2 pages into one image. With all of the that he does, it makes these 13 pages feel like 10 pages total. And last week was 15 pages, which is also under average. The average amount for a chapter would be 16 to 17 pages, sometimes 18. But unfortunately, 13 to 15 is becoming more common with One Piece in the last few months, and my assumption is that that's because of Oda's eye condition, and him just not physically having the ability to prepare full chapters. And I don't know if that's ever getting better, honestly, and I think this reduced page number every 3 or 4 chapters might just be the new normal, which has interesting impacts for the future of the series, because if you've been keeping up with One Piece Weekly for a number of years now, you'll definitely have noticed that we get less and less chapters every year. And now, in addition to less chapters, we're on a trend of getting shorter and shorter chapters as well. So we're getting less of them and they're smaller, which inevitably, I suppose, makes One Piece last longer because we're moving towards the end at such a reduced pace every year. And that's the option that I'm okay with. The other option that I'd be less okay with is that Oda notices the reduced workflow and has to condense and or cut ideas to keep One Piece moving so that we do one day, maybe one day soon, actually finish the series. Although thankfully it doesn't look like that's what's happening at the moment because we did just get out of a heavily detailed Kuma flashback, so my hope is that reduced chapters and reduced pages just ends up making One Piece last longer. But that depends on Oda and how keen he is to continue giving his entire life to it. But we'll be here right beside him the whole way forward, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel for consistent injections of One Piece culture administered directly into your YouTube feed.